If you've been saved and been aware of, religion, denominations, both historically and even more modern day, we witness a great leaving. A great leaving of truth. A departure from the Scriptures. A departure from the Lord Jesus Christ and what He would have. A departure from the ministry the way it's supposed to be, as was given to us by the Apostle Paul and passed down. There are scores of examples of denominations that at one point in time preached truth and preached very similar to messages that you'll hear from a pulpit like this here today, but now have left those things. They left their first love. And and we could sit and we could talk about those things. I'm sure you're familiar with those and get on other denominations. But the reality is the same thing will happen and is happening in the Baptist denomination. And I'm actually old enough and have seen it enough to see it happen even in King James Bible-believing, independent, fundamental, premillennial Baptist churches. Where churches have left their first love for other things. You say, what's the issue there? Well, I think there's a reason for it. I think as a church ages, it begins to experience new challenges. You know, first generation comes in and gets saved, and there's a war that they have out here. And there's a war that they have with family and with friends to live right, and they get ostracized from their family, and there's a battle that rages for them to cling to the truth that is given to them. But as a church ages and those parents grow in the Lord, and that first generation grows in the things of the Lord, and they begin to teach their children, they raise a generation that grows up in these truths. And when they grow up in these truths, they haven't fought for these truths. They were just delivered to them. And because they were just delivered to them, and maybe they don't have a full understanding of what it cost others to deliver these sacred truths to them, they take them for granted. And because they take them for granted, eventually they decide when they get into leadership positions in a church just like ours here today, that they're going to dump some things. They're going to leave some things. I think what Ephesus is going through here is the result of it just being a multi-generational church. Which Open Door is today. A multi-generational church. And actually, I'm part of that. I'm multi-generational. I'm second-generation Christian. And they were that. And in a multi-generational church, what happens is those who came first and those who got saved out of Roman Catholicism or saved out of atheism or really anything, just saved out of darkness. Let's just put it that way. Doesn't really matter. Saved. And there's such a darkness to light experience. They come in and they establish the church and they get the work going. But then what happens is they get older. And as they get older, they get to where they're no longer able to carry on the work. And so the work naturally gets passed to those who come up behind, which is right and which is good, and those who are younger begin to take over things. And as they do it, though, if that appreciation isn't there, then the temptation will be to leave. But here's the problem. I'm not talking about leaving and leaving. I'm talking about leaving and staying. And that's a major problem. When you leave, but you stay. You see what I'm saying? Better it would be if you leave in your heart to then leave in body than to leave in heart here and stay here and try to change it. And best of all would be to stay and stay. You get it? And that was what they were facing. They had a bunch of people in the church who had left in heart but stayed in. And when they stayed in, and they got into positions of authority, and the other people started getting a little bit older and realized that the next generation has to come and take over some things. What was beginning to happen at this church is exactly what the preacher mentioned last week, which is the temptation of any church as it gets to this stage is to let somebody run it into the ground. because of a lack of appreciation, a disassociation with those first loves.